and whether you can give a guarantee to all of us that none of our computers, none of our telephones, none of our communications are the subject of interference, interception, and surveillance to determine what we do, what we think, and how we conduct our politics. Thank you, Mr. President.
The Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Certainly, I will guarantee that no member of this House, either the telephone or cell phone or computer or iPad or whatever, must be interfered with. Must not. That's what I'm saying. Must not be interfered with. In no way we should allow that as a country. Absolutely. If the security agencies have information about anyone, irrespective of position, that there is something wrong, they apply to a designated judge. That's the only route. No other route can be allowed. Now, once the judge is satisfied that a citizen, irrespective of whether it's a member of parliament or whatever, there's something wrong, then the judge grants the permission. That's the only route. I will never allow anyone just to decide to intercept anyone. That is, in fact, infringing the law.
Honorable Dexter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm not one of the more paranoid members of the House, so I'm not going to ask about my own communications. But I think, Mr. President, the issue is not really only about whether the government is doing this. Because I take you at your word. I believe there is a policy precision. But there is a problem with private people, both through connections in the state, people acting illegally, and then also using their own technology and other things and resources. So, to my mind, the issue is not simply a question of saying the government is to blame. I think there's a broader issue about the environment which we live in. I mean, the lighter side of it, Mr. President, is that members of your own cabinet believe that they are and political leaders claim that they are being investigated, even suspended ones now, you see. So there is a lighter side of this, but I think underneath it is a very serious issue about what is the capacity in our country that exists for this kind of monitoring, and does the government have a handle on it? I take you at your word, but I think that it would do the citizens a great deal of good and provide comfort to some of your colleagues for them to know that, in fact, they are in good hands, President.
The Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Of course, the question was about what is alleged that state agencies are intercepting communications. That's what I was answering. The issue of the private companies, that's a matter which I think the honorable member was referring to. The only thing, he was putting it on a wrong place. That is the matter that the Minister of Justice is looking at. That's a matter he's looking at, and once he concludes that, we'll then deal with the matter, because they are not allowed to do so. And you might have, once the matter is concluded, to look at the remedies. How do we stop either individuals or private companies to do so? Because citizens must be protected.
Honorable C.V. Burgess.
Honorable President, I like the way in which you educate those that are not familiar with the processes. It is very difficult when you don't know the processes that you become paranoid with these
Order, honorable members, order.
perceptions. But Honorable President, you are correct when you condemn unlawful interception communications. communications. That is correct. You made it clear that you condemn that. Honorable President, as you are also well aware, the RICA Act, as you have indicated, and particularly Section 49, provides that a person who intentionally and unlawfully intercepts communications is guilty of an offense. And 51 of that same act says that if you are found guilty, you are subject to a fine of 2 million rand or a period of imprisonment in 10 years. Honorable President, does the Honorable President have knowledge of any widespread abuse regarding unlawful interception? And does the Honorable President consider the penalties in the RICA Act to be adequate?
Honourable Member,
as
your
a
time has
deterrence?
expired. The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Of course, I don't have any knowledge of such activities. As I said, the private interceptors which have come before the Minister of Justice, he's looking at that. I don't have the details of it. But certainly the punishment that you just read for those who infringe the law, I think we took that decision very wisely, that such people, if they commit a crime, they must be punished. So I agree with what is stipulated in the law.
I thank the Honourable President. Question number 15 has been asked by the Honourable Alice Chikunga. The Honourable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable members, South Africa was active in the support and drafting of the AU roadmap for the resolution of the Libyan crisis and the subsequent proposals to the Libyan parties for a framework agreement on a political solution to the crisis in Libya. We have also been actively engaged with both the erstwhile Libyan government and the National Transitional Council in finding a peaceful solution to the crisis. We believe the AU roadmap still provides the best way forward towards peace and normality in Libya. The elements of the roadmap include the immediate cessation of hostilities, facilitation of the delivery of humanitarian assistance, the protection of foreign and African migrant workers, the establishment and management of an inclusive transitional government, and the adoption and implementation of political reforms to meet the aspirations of the Libyan people for democracy, justice, peace, and security. These elements are in line with the AU post-conflict reconstruction and development policy. At the 297th meeting of the AU Peace and Security Council, the AU reiterated deep concern with regard to the proliferation of weapons and their impact on regional security and stability. In this regard, it was proposed that a regional conference be convened to facilitate regional coordination and cooperation. The PSC also urged the Libyan authorities to ensure the safety and security of African migrant workers, and to hold a pledging conference to mobilize resources for the socio-economic reintegration of migrant workers into their countries of origin. PSC also authorized the chairperson of the Commission to establish an AU liaison office in Tripoli to be headed by a special representative. This office will work with the United Nations, the League of Arab States, and other stakeholders to stabilize Libya, promote national reconciliation and inclusivity, as well as to facilitate the transitional process towards democratic institutions. South Africa has its own unique contribution to make. Our experience in reconciliation, as well as the integration of the armed forces following the transition to its democratic dispensation, could be relevant in the current post-conflict phase in Libya. In addition, the governance configuration in the great socialist people's Libyan Arab Jamahiriya did not foster a culture of democracy and respect for human rights and the rule of law. Greater effort will need to be exerted to support the establishment of the requisite democratic institutions, legal frameworks, and reconciliatory mechanisms. South Africa stands ready to assist in any way possible so that Libya can return to normalcy. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank the Honorable President. Is there a supplementary question, Honorable Chikunga?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me thank the President for the elaborate answer to our question. Honorable President, how is the AU and South Africa in particular hoping to support the National Transitional Council, NTC, in helping Libya in the democratic process in general and inclusive government in particular going forward? Thank you.
The Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Of course, the AU and South Africa, which is part of the AU, have been working very hard on the Libyan question. We've had a lot of meetings, as well as the work of the ad hoc committee of 5 heads of states that headed the activities with regard to Libya. We also looked at the AU's own policies and positions. For an example, given the history of the continent, that any change that is brought through military means in any country, that regime would not be recognized by the AU. In discussing the question of the Libyan problem, given the fact that Libya historically in the last 41 or 42 years did not have these constitutional institutions and no constitution at all, except what I read here, we felt as the AU we should be flexible, that those people in Libya who asked for change and who therefore later became the NTC and now the ones who are establishing the inclusive government, they will be allowed by the AU to come and occupy the seat of Libya. in the AU so that they participate in the processes of reconstruction in Libya. That is what the AU has done. In other words, much as it had a view and a very clear position about how to deal with those who come to authority of any country through military means. In this case, because of the unique situation of Libya, then the AU decided as one of the steps to help that they should be part of us and we should work with them to ensure that we are able to move forward. We are even more concerned now because the manner in which the Libyan situation has been dealt with, it has created not just a situation in Libya which affects the citizens of that country, but it has affected the entire region. Many countries, whether it's Mali or it's Chad or Niger or Mauritania, they are affected. Many people have been walking into these countries well armed. So we are talking about the Libyan situation that has undermined the regional security. So that's a big concern of the AU. So we are going to do everything we can to ensure that we work with the Libyans to solve their problems as quickly as possible, help them to establish proper democratic institutions so that there could be a legitimate government in Libya. Thank you.
I have on my screen the following honorable members wish to take the floor. The Honorable K.S. Mubu, followed by the Honorable M.B. Skosana, and the last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Ramatlaka. Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. President, there were media reports that South African mercenaries had tried to extract late Muammar Gaddafi from Libya. How do you think this country can win the confidence of the National Transitional Council as an honest contributor to the reconciliation in that country? And secondly, it's also understood that there are considerable Libyan assets in this country that have been frozen by this government. Will the government now unfreeze these assets and as a contribution to the reconstruction of Libya? Would the President be in a position to tell us how much of these assets are worth, the value of the assets? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And of course, the Honorable member says there were allegations or rumors, something like that, with regard to mercenaries. Now, I'm not sure whether I should give a rumored answer on the rumors because that is being asking me to comment on rumors. I'm not sure whether that will be helpful. Because if there are rumors or allegations untested, then they remain rumors. So we could treat them certainly as rumors. But with regard to the issues of Libya's assets, certainly this country followed the decision of the United Nations when that decision was taken. I don't know what is the amount of the assets. Certainly, once the UN takes the decision that they must be released, and I'm sure this country will follow what the United Nations would be saying. That will be our position. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Skosana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. President, you are a politician, and you know that it's often not easy for a politician to say that you have answered me. So I'm going to check. Mr. President, Colonel Gaddafi and a few of his countrymen shared the dream of Pan-Africanism. But it is now clear from the latest events in Libya that the political and the economic ties or loyalties will certainly lie with the countries of the north, particularly those whose forces are serving in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, that is NATO, and to an extent into the Warsaw Pact. Therefore, sir, what specific African virtues and ties actually bind South Africa and the AU to the nascent regime in Libya? Thank you. You may have answered that, sir, but I'm checking.
The Honorable President.
You want to give a politician's answer? No, honorable member. The issue of Libya, which, because I want to start from where you started, that Gaddafi had a dream of Pan-Africanism. As you know, Gaddafi's regime came into power during the days of coups in the continent. There were no rules that we have today. So people would come in, they would declare their policies, like Gaddafi did. Much as he dreamed of Pan-Africanism. But the fact of the matter, as I just described here, there was something which was just Libya, Jamahiriya, not Pan-Africanism or anything. As you know, he came in through the coup. He couped a king, but he called it a revolution and continued to say there was a revolution in Libya. Certainly, over the period, of course, he was part of the AU, saying whatever everybody was saying about how much we stood for Pan-Africanism. I don't think we perused the details of each country, how it was doing its policies. As you heard here, I was reading, it was a socialist kind of thing. You know that at one time there was African socialism. Heads of state have said things in the past. So insofar as that is concerned, I'm not certain whether I could give certainty as to what type of Pan-Africanism that Gaddafi stood for, as many others espouse this kind of policy. But these are the debates that have gone on for decades in an attempt to clarify what do we mean by this. But coming back to your next question of the NATO countries, I think Africa is faced with a serious problem as it reflected itself in Libya, wherein, whilst we are in this continent, countries outside of this continent really moved in and continuously bombarded a country for months on end, and did not even listen to the Continental Organization when it was saying, here is a road map. That has, I think, posed a challenge. I think everybody's clear that the approach between us and those across the Mediterranean is not the same. I think the coming joint session of EU in particular and the AU will have to discuss this matter. How do we relate between the two continents, given the recent experience of Libya? And I'm sure when the AU meets in January in its annual summit, these matters will be discussed. How do you handle this experience, and how do we relate to members of NATO? So I'm sure the matter will be discussed. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Honorable Ramatlaka.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your answer there. But following the reply, the problem of Libya, of reconstruction and peace, is still going to be very hard. Hard road lies ahead. Now, we have read much about the joint letter between the US, UK, and France about the particular interest they had in the Libyan question. But the question I want to ask in relation to the reconstruction, I know South Africa said no, they were outmaneuvered with the resolution 1973, but the question is, when you engage with them at the forums, where you engage with them, as I say, UN, are they prepared to put resources in a reconstruction of Libya, particularly those forces that had a particular interest in Gaddafi, that he must be removed permanently? What do they say when you engage with them about the real reconstruction of Libya going forward.
The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Firstly, just to correct the other point, South Africa was not outmaneuvered. There was an abuse of a United Nations Security Council resolution, 1973. It was not outmaneuvered. I just wanted to correct that. If that impression is there, is a wrong impression. Big forces abused a resolution which was very clear. With regard to reconstruction, they are certainly very keen to ensure the reconstruction. I think there were specific interests that the countries that got involved in Libya had. And of course, they've been saying Libya has sufficient funds. The funds that they're talking about, which the honorable member was asking that they must be released, that were frozen, they believe they've got sufficient funds that will be utilized in the reconstruction. What else that will happen, I can't give the details as to what will happen, because certainly there's been bombardment that devastated cities, and certainly there's going to be a lot of activities to reconstruct. I'm sure the same people who are bombing are going to be the same people who are going to participate in the reconstruction. But of course, the Libyan money, which they've been having, which was frozen, will be utilized. And if there were any shortages, I think there are usual procedures, what countries do to ensure that they get the money if they fall short. But those who are speaking say Libya has enough resources to reconstruct itself. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Question number 16 has been asked by the Honorable J.B. Sibanyoni, the President.
Honorable former President of the ANC, Comrade Oliver Tambo, uttered the following words in Luanda, Angola, in 1977 at the Congress of the MPLA. And I quote, "Peoples of the world in conditions of equality, mutual respect, and equal advantage," unquote. This is what should guide our relations with foreign nationals, especially those from the African continent. Racism, racial discrimination, are in conflict with our constitution and human rights culture and should be eradicated in all their forms. In addition, South Africans were recipients of friendship, solidarity, and support by the peoples of Africa and the world. The South African government, therefore, understands international solidarity perfectly well. Foreign nationals have lived among South Africans for decades in conditions of peace and friendship. The new anti-foreigner sentiment in some communities is fueled by a number of factors. Amongst these are poverty, income inequality, and joblessness. It also entails competition for scarce resources such as basic services. There is also the high percentage of unemployment among youth, which gives rise to vulnerability and negative influences. Ineffective implementation of municipal bylaws regulating informal trading has also been cited as a problem which has led to competition for trading space. There are also criminals who hide under the screen of anti-foreigner sentiments. We are attending to all these underlying causes. Last year, we established an interministerial committee chaired by the Minister of Police to deal with the matter. They developed a plan that government is implementing. An important intervention is to mainstream civic education in society and promote awareness about foreign nationals and the fact that not all of them are illegal immigrants. There are also foreign nationals who are in our country as refugees fleeing conflict in their countries. Government has systems of providing assistance to them in a humane and caring manner. We acknowledge that many of them contribute immensely to economic growth in our country. They bring skills and add to the cosmopolitan atmosphere that any progressive country in the world needs. We welcome the involvement of Chapter 9 institutions, for an example, the South African Human Rights Commission, in helping us to deal with this challenge. The Commission sent government its report and recommendations on what government departments should do following the tragic 2008 attacks. The IMC will be meeting later this month to review progress, including what has been done to implement the Human Rights Commission recommendations. Most importantly, government cannot effectively deal with this challenge alone. We invite all sectors to become part of the campaign to build a caring society. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank the Honorable President. Is there a supplementary question, Honorable Sibanyoni?
Ngithokoze Somlomo. Ngithokoze khulu Mengameli. Indlela uhlathulule ngayo indaba le emraro omkhulu kangaka yihle begodu ikarisa kwamambala. Indaba yama nationals nama non-nationals imraro orara abantu khulu. Ngifuna ukuzubhula. The ANC is against all forms of discrimination, be it against nationals or non-nationals, in the form of xenophobia. Hence, in 2007, National Conference, the ANC resolved that ANC structures must take a lead in fighting xenophobic practices and ensure the integration of refugees in society. As we celebrate the centenary existence of the ANC in 2012, we should thank all foreign countries, especially our neighboring countries, for having pledged solidarity with us in the times of the struggle and hosted our struggle stalwarts when they were forced by the oppressive regime to seek refuge. Aloke Mengameli, bengikubawa ukuthi mhlawumbeni amezwi wakho wokusikhuthaza singabajameli bomphakathi ama-public representatives.
Honourable Member, your time has expired. Your time has expired, Honourable Member. The Honourable President.
Kufanele lungehloniphekile ukuthi njengabajameli balelizwe lento yabantu abaphuma ngaphandle siqhubeke sishumayezane ukuthi asingabacwasi asibathande njengabantu nabo sibaphathe kahle ikakhulu ngoba nabo basiphatha kahle kuyisifiso sethu ke sokuthi lokhu okwashiwe inhlangano lephetheyo ishumayeza abantu bonke bajoin abantu sibambisane kudala sihlala nabo laba bantu abaqhamuke endane ezahlukahlukene sizihlobo nabo bangabakhwenya kwezinye indawo nathi singabakhwenya akuphathane kahle kwakhe ubuhlobo uma singenze njalo ngabe silwisana nezinto eziningi ngoba phela sishumayeza ubunye kungabikho ukucwasana ngobuhlanga noma ngobuzwe asiqhubekeke senze njalo ngajabula kakhulu mina uma lendlu yesishamthetho kungaba into le eyimemezelayo ezweni njalo nje ibakhumbuza abantu ukuthi kufanele ukuba sibaphathe kahle abantu bakithi eAfrika nezihlobo zethu siyabonga
The following my screen, Honorable V. Bindlovu, followed by Honorable K. R.J. Mishwe, and the last question will be asked by Honorable S. Mukhalapa in that order. Baba Ndlovu.
Thank you. Thank you, Somlomo. Mhlonishwa Mongameli. Angizokhuluma abakhwenyana. Angikhulumi futhi ngalabo abasemthethweni Mongameli. Ngikhuluma ngalabo abahamba ngaphasi kocingo. Abangafanele ukuba lapha. Okubonakala lapha kwezinye indawo kuthiwa bathatha izindlu zabanye abantu. Lobudlelwano okhuluma ngabo othi buholwa uNyambose. Ikomiti liholwa uNyambose, uMinister wamaphoyisa. Lifinyelela nini kulaba ukuze bakwazi ukuphinda kubo? Ngoba phela khona abakithi nathi abaswela abangaphakathi okudinga bakwazi ukucosha lokwa lapha eSouth Africa.
The Honorable the President.
Ngiyabonga Somlongo ngibonge naselungini esihloniphekile lesishamthetho lokho engikhulume ngakho okuzobhekwa ngqo ikomiti likaNyambose eliphethwe uNyambose libhekene nabo kanye labo abahubuluza ngaphansi kocingo abangekho emthethweni ibona labo sifuna ukuba sithola indlela ukuthi labo bantu uma betholakala hayi ukuthi kuzobe kuqala into esiyenza ngqo ukuthi uma betholakala bayathathwa babuyisele makubo sinendawo nalapha abagcinwa khona ukuthi uma sebetholakele bagcinwa khona ebese beyagoduswa sikhuluma ngalabo ke esithi kufanele ukuthi ingalo yomthetho ifikelele kubona uma ke setholakala umuntu kuye kutholakala ukuthi njengoba echushe phansi kocingo nje ukusiphi isimo nabo laba abachusha phansi kocingo bakhona abachusha ngoba becoshwa isimo sezombangazwe emakubo siyaphoqeleka ngomthetho kazwelonke ukuthi abanjalo singababuyisela emuva sibanikeze ilungelo ukuthi bavikeleke njengababaleki ababalekele ezombusazwe noma ngabe bahubuluze phansi kocingo ngoba phela uma ebaleka umuntu kwela kubo kukubi isinyathela amasimba abantwana akakwazi ukuthi abese ucela futhi kuwo lo hulumeni ipassport yokuhamba ngeke akwazi ukuyithola uyangena hubuluze ilo msebenzi ke siyamthola esithola ukuthi hayi ungena nje akanazi izizathu ilo simbuyisele emuva leli komiti ke njengoba ngishilo lizohlangana libuke umbiko lo oye walethwa kuhulumeni ezinye izakhiwo ubuswenza ke inhlelo zokuthi uzoqhubeka kanjani ukusebenza nokuthi ulwisane nalokho okuyinkinga njengobusho njengoba sekuyezwakala ukuthi abanye babo bathatha zona izindlu lezi ezifuna ngabe zithathwe laba bantulayo bala ngaphakathi. Yikho konke lokho ke lungehloniphekileyo okuzobhekwa ebese kuyalungiswa. Siyabonga somlo.
Honorable Mishra.
Thank you, Speaker. We are all saddened by the senseless xenophobic attacks on foreign nationals in our country. During the struggle against apartheid, thousands of South Africans were given refuge all over the world, particularly on the African continent. They were given job opportunities and access to schools and universities. They were given proper medical care when they required it and were not accused of being of problems that their countries were experiencing. While I accept, Honorable President, that it is our collective responsibility to ensure that we educate our members about how to treat foreign nationals among us, I want to know if there is a specific program that government is having to educate our people that besides respecting the rights of foreign nationals, we need to learn to reciprocate. So is there a plan that is in place? Thank you.
The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Certainly, in what I say we needed to talk about, we've been talking about, has been to conscientize our people about what happened to us when we were also refugees or freedom fighters in other countries. It's important. But there is also an international rule and law that when people come under difficult conditions, you must care for them. And this is what we are saying. Whatever else that we do, we cannot allow a situation where there is an anti-foreigner attitude. It's not correct. And that's why I was saying, Honorable Member, we should give leadership, all of us here collectively, as this Parliament, to educate the nation on that matter, in addition to whatever else is being done. I'm certain that Parliament itself could work out a program that it could utilize, which should be very powerful if it is led by the representative of the people in this country who are elected, who are here in Parliament. Certainly this must be a challenge for all of us, not only for government only, but all of us. Because this is what we have been doing. As the Honorable Member was saying earlier, the ruling party, in fact, undertook a program. And I'll be happy if other parties join the ruling party to do so. Thank you very much.
Honorable Mkhalapa, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable President, I think this xenophobic attacks has put a shame on all of us. And I think we definitely do accept your call for collective responsibility. Mr. President, since you became President of the Republic in May 2009, would you say that xenophobia in South Africa has gotten better or worse? And please just explain your answer, sir. And secondly, sir, considering that as President, you have a powerful voice to influence people, what have you done in your personal capacity to speak out against xenophobia? And in your opinion, have you done enough, sir? Thank you.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Member. I will give an answer. I will not explain my answer, but I will give an answer without explaining it. I think it is true that there have been incidents of xenophobia, which we acted upon immediately, and indeed stopped it in the first instance and interacted with the people. In fact, we went into a number of areas to talk to people and resolve that question. We went to the area of Tshwane, for an example, as well as the areas of Johannesburg, in Israel, down, and it disappeared. But I think it has been showing itself in various areas, not only ordinary people sitting, but as well as in business. You know, in Soweto, for an example, business people raised voices about the fact that foreigners were taking their businesses, and there has been action taken. And I think we should continue to do so. Because as long as we have poverty that we have, but also have the numbers that we have of the foreigners, that certainly is a recipe for this problem to keep on coming. That's why it needs all of us to deal with it, to be able to conscientize of our citizens that it is not correct to have a wrong attitude towards a foreigner. They are our brothers, they are citizens of this continent, of this globe. Of course, others come from beyond Africa, but I think we should be able to handle the matter. And I think so far, given the numbers of the foreigners who are in South Africa, we have fairly handled this question, I think. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
We move on to question number 17. And question number 17 has been asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable members, it is not necessary for the President to lay down a policy position on matters related to useless and wasteful expenditure and on the improper use of state funds. These matters are satisfactorily addressed in the Public Finance Management Act and in its subordinate treasury regulations. In terms of the Public Finance Management Act, accounting officers of departments and institutions are responsible for the effective, efficient, economical, and transparent use of their institutions' resources. In addition, the Act requires accounting officers to take effective and appropriate steps to prevent unauthorized, irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. Officials are also required to take effective and appropriate steps to prevent, within that official's area of responsibility, any unauthorized, irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. The law also makes provision for appropriate disciplinary steps against any official of a government department or public entity who makes or permits unauthorized, irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. In addition, Treasury regulations require accounting officers to exercise all reasonable care to prevent and detect unauthorized, irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure, and must, for this purpose, implement effective, efficient, and transparent financial and risk management processes. Regulations also provide that losses or damages resulting from unauthorized, irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure must be recovered or dealt with. It is therefore clear that the current legislative framework makes adequate provision for accounting officers and accounting authorities to deal with transgressions, disciplinary steps, and the recovery of losses resulting from fruitless and wasteful expenditure. We also appreciate the role of charities such as the Auditor General, Public Protector, and the South African Human Rights Commission, amongst others, who monitor such conduct on behalf of the Republic, of the public. We also have law enforcement agencies and investigative bodies such as the Special Investigating Unit, Asset Forfeiture Unit, and other instruments to deal with serious transgressions. In addition, executive authorities are constitutionally required to regularly report to Parliament on matters under their control, including actions taken on the matters relating to the members' questions. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank the Honorable President. Is there a supplementary question? The Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the President has indeed gone through a long laundry list of checks and balances that exist in our country to prevent the misuse of public funds. And yet still, Mr. President, far too much public money is wasted in South Africa. Money that should be used to improve services for all South Africa's people. Mr. President, all spheres of government need to redouble their efforts to curb fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and we must guard against new forms of wasteful expenditure. Next year, the organization that you lead, the African National Congress, will celebrate its centenary. Taxpayers' money is already being used to upgrade infrastructure that will be used during the ANC's birthday celebrations. Would you agree that it is wrong to use public money to support this event, either directly or indirectly? If not, why not? And would you agree that spending of this nature should be classified as fruitless and wasteful? Should such expenditure, if it is found to have taken place, be held responsible, or should ministers, who have been engaged in such expenditure, or MECs or government officials, be held responsible and criminally liable for this spending and the money be recovered? Thank you very much.
The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I wish the member was very specific, once again, as to where this is being done. Because, again, to answer generalities is a big problem. Because if you make the statement that this is being done, we are not saying at this particular point, this is what is being done, so that those responsible can then immediately move and deal with those matters. Now, I think the honorable member is wanting me to generalize. Now, generalize on allegations that are being made. Now,
Order, honorable members.
as you know, South Africa has the oldest organization, the African National Congress, celebrating its centenary next year. Now, the ANC is different from other political parties. It was established by the South African people, in fact, Southern Africa. And these people believe they have a right to celebrate this organization. How they celebrate it, I don't know as yet. If there was evidence that, look, these people are in a sense celebrating it in this way or in that way, I would say let us look at the issue. If, for an example, people who recognize the work done by this organization to liberate all of us, it liberated oppressor and oppressed together. And they want to utilize the facilities that are there in the country, that are used by others for any other thing. Is there anything wrong? But if you said there was this officer who budgeted to celebrate the centenary from the budget of the country, then let us discuss that matter if that issue is there. Now, that's why I started by saying, if, honorable member, you generalize, then you are putting me into difficulties. How do I answer? There may be no case at all of such allegations.
Order, order, order. Order, honorable members.
The ANC, as I know, has been raising its own funds to celebrate its centenary. And it has spent money to celebrate its centenary. That's what I know. As one of the leaders of the ANC, we have participated in raising the money. Now, any suggestion that says there is money being used that is not of the ANC, and you are not specific, that's my problem. Because if you are not specific, how do I react to that? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Order, order, honorable members. I have the following speakers on my screen: the Honorable N.J. Kurnov, the Honorable N. Singh, and the Honorable T.M. Masuta.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable President, let's get
Order,
back.
honorable members. Let's hear the speaker.
Let's get back to the question that was originally addressed to you. We all should save our resources, whether it's a private household or whether it's the government, especially in these times. And I think government should set the example, and so the ministers. Now, Honorable President, will you consider to take the matter of wasteful expenditure up personally with each minister whose department has failed the nation, and hold them personally accountable if the situation is not rectified the following year? In other words, will you fire them if they do not perform the next year?
The Honorable President.
Well, Honorable Speaker, really I've answered the question. There are measures that are there, remedies if such a situation happened. And those measures have been taken in the history of this government, where we have found wasteful expenditure. Certainly action will be taken, there's no doubt about it. I don't think anyone would doubt that if we found such transgressions, we are not going to act. We have been acting and will act. What nature of the remedy would be, it will depend on how the transgression itself is and what, as we weigh either the gravity of it or whatever, what type of action will be taken. As you know, it does not prescribe firing only. It prescribes a number of steps and a number of different levels of what do you do. Everything that we are talking about. So I'm saying once we found it, if we find it, we'll act. And the acting will be in accordance with the size of the crime committed.
I thank the Honorable President. Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, whilst I agree with the acting part, that one has to act, and whilst I agree that there are legislative prescripts that recognize, identify fruitless and wasteful expenditure, what is cause for concern is the ability of the departments, firstly, to deal with allegations of corruption, and secondly, to take disciplinary action against offenders. And I say so, Mr. President, reading from the Public Service Commission report of March 2011, where they say, on investigations into allegations of corruption, only 15% of the departments were found to have advanced investigative capacity, while 25% have basic capacity. The others don't have any capacity. On disciplinary actions, the PSC has found that departments are often lenient in imposing disciplinary sanctions against officials found guilty of fraud and corruption. It is common to find written or final written warnings to officials found guilty of fraud and corruption. And this ties in with the question by the Honorable Kurnov, Mr. President, that not enough is being done to set examples of those officials who are responsible especially for fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Because fruitless and wasteful expenditure is expenditure that brings no tangible
Honourable Member,
outcome
your time has
for
expired.
the department or the taxpayer. Thank you, Mr. President.
The Honourable, the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Well, you are reading a report that again is talking about certain departments which may not have the capacity at all, some of them very limited capacity, and that they've been lenient towards those that are found to have done something wrong. That's a view as it emerging from the report. The point that you are making is, if, for an example, because even with those that you say have no capacity at all, the report is not saying they've not acted. It does not necessarily make that assertion. Now, I'm saying if we have got proposals to make, why don't you make the proposals? To say, if we find this thing, as a member of parliament, I think this is what we should do. Because different departments, finding discretions of one kind or the other, act in a particular way. I think you should be saying, probably we are critical as a result of the report. We must discuss what other remedies we would want to propose. Then I'll listen to you. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Honourable Masuta.
Thank you, Speaker. Honourable President, I agree entirely with you, and I would like to echo your sentiments in congratulating the Auditor General for uncovering some of these difficulties and challenges in government departments, so that we as legislators can also do our part in exercising oversight. And in this regard, cooperation with members of the executive is absolutely crucial. But, Honourable Speaker, I would have expected the new leader of the opposition to rise to the occasion today and tell us what the DA is going to do with Mr. Odendal in Midval. A report has just been presented by the public protector which exposes millions of rands that are being put to waste that belongs to the public by a councillor of the DA. What are you going to do? If you live in glass houses, remember not to throw stones recklessly. Thank you.
Order, honourable
Point
members.
of order,
Order,
Mr.
order,
Speaker.
honourable members. Order, order.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, honourable member.
Speaker, I'd like to request whether this is questions to the President or questions to the DA.
Yes, it's not a supplementary question. We move on to the next question, which is question number 18, which is a question that has been asked by the Honourable M.G. Likota, the President.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The Honourable Member refers to Section 12(1) of the Income Tax Act announced in the 2011 budget. As of 31st October 2011, the Minister of Trade and Industry has approved 8 major industrial projects in terms of this particular scheme. These projects will create 21,112 direct and indirect jobs and result in total investment of about 9 billion rand by the private sector. The projects cover a broad range of industrial sectors, including agro-processing, biofuels, pulp and paper, chemical and plastic industries. As you are aware, this particular tax-based incentive scheme caters for large industrial projects with a minimum greenfield investment value of 200 million rand in manufacturing assets. These projects have been selected on the basis of their strong backward and forward linkages and their potential to create jobs along the entire value chain. We do not have information on the number of people who have since been rehired. We are, however, very reassured by the strong improvement in employment creation over the past year. After the substantial job losses from the time the global economic downturn started in late 2008 through the end of last year, employment creation has recovered very satisfactorily. The latest Stats SA survey shows that total employment grew by 340 from the third quarter of 2010 to the third quarter of 2011, or by 2.7%. Formal employment increased by 390,000 or 4.3% in the same period, a faster rate of growth than the GDP. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank the Honorable President. Is there a supplementary question, Honorable Likota?
Yes, Speaker, I'd like to apologize for arriving late, Mr. President. I had an appointment at quite a distance. Mr. President, I think the majority of the people in the country agree with the warning of the Deputy President that unemployment is a ticking time bomb. As we speak, the Development Bank of South Africa has warned 2 days ago that if we are to create jobs, we need 10% growth. The FFC has a similar view that at the minimum we need 8 to 9% growth. And yet the Minister of Finance advised us in a week or 2 weeks back or so that at the highest, the growth rate that we will achieve is probably 3, at the highest 4. That means we will not be able to be creating jobs as what the government has promised. Now, the big question is, what is the government going to do in the light of those projections? Because, as the Deputy President has said, it's a ticking time bomb unemployment. What steps are we taking to avoid this situation? Because as at the time when these realities happen, we will be faced with a rebellion from increasing numbers of young people in this country. Why is the government
Honourable Member, your time has expired.
That it will create 500 million jobs in these circumstances?
The President.
Thank you, Honourable. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And of course, the Honourable Member will know that when the government said it was going to create a particular number of jobs, we were discussing that matter in the face of the recovery globally from the 2008 financial problems. Of course, things have changed. We now have another financial crisis. Now, South Africa is not an island that when the world is faced with this difficulty, it could move as if nothing has happened. That affects everyone. In fact, the question of unemployment is a global problem. As long as you have the economic problems, you cannot move faster in terms of the growth. Even if you take the situation today where the Eurozone, for an example, is in difficulties. But we are still on the positive, not on the negative. But we can't grow as fast as we thought we would. Nobody could predict that there will be this global situation. When we said, this is how we are going to grow, we're basing that on the economic landscape at the time. What the government is going to do, I don't think we can do magic. We are going to try to do whatever we can to ensure that we are able no longer just to move faster as to grow up to 10 or 9, but to ensure that we stay in the positive. And I think the minister, when the minister was discussing here, indicated what we are doing as government to be able to keep our economy afloat, but at the same time, create employment. There are very specific things that we have done. We have, for an example, put aside 800 billion rand for infrastructure. That is one specific thing that tends to create jobs. And you have said already, in terms of the statistics, we are in fact creating jobs, but not at the rate at which we had said we were. But given our plans that we have put in place, we are confident that we are going to create jobs, we are going to deal with the situation. But in the face of the global economic crisis. But we are still moving forward. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
I thank the Honorable President. There is a bit of a glitch here, malfunctioning of the system, but I've got the following list of names handed over to the table. And these are the Honorable Ntuli, followed by the Honorable Dudley, and the Honorable Mazibuko, in that order. Honorable Ntuli.
Ngiyabonga Somlomo. Ngibonge nakumongameli. Speaker, we have learned that there is a shortage of skills, hence the rollover of infrastructure funds. What role can infrastructure development play in job creation and skills development? And how can the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission assist? I thank you.
The Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Certainly the Presidential Coordinating Commission will certainly play a role. That commission is going to look at very specific projects, particularly if you take into account what I've just said, that there's the resources or the funds put aside for infrastructure. We are working very hard on a plan to deal with very specific nationally infrastructure projects. Once you start infrastructure project, you certainly create jobs. And in the process of that, as it has been experienced, people learn skills in the process. Once there's been infrastructure development, by the time we finish it, there are people who qualify for certain skills. So in a sense, we'll be making a contribution. And of course, we are inviting the private sector to participate as well. So we believe the plans that we have will, in a sense, contribute towards skill development, in addition to what we are doing outside of the infrastructure, whatever. For an example, our concentration on skills development at all levels, including at the level of the higher education, the colleges that we are reviving so that we are able to create skills in a bigger rate. So we hope our plans will certainly help to address the challenges you talk about. Thank you.
Honorable Dudley.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Mr. President,
In admitting that the Industrial Development Corporation could do more in sustainable job creation, the Chief Executive, Mr. Kwena, said there are many hurdles around policy that are holding it back, and there has to be more policy adjustments at government level. Can the President expand on this and on whether or not progress is being made in adjusting these policies, and what are the hurdles? Thank you.
Honourable the President.
Well, I hope I knew what are these specific bottlenecks that I'm supposed to comment on whether we're doing something about. Because we have been working hard, and I've said this repeatedly, that we are trying to move away from the slow pace in the manner in which governments do things. We want to do things differently. And that's part of what we've been trying to do, to say what can we do quicker and better in terms of how do we implement our policies, how do we deal with bottlenecks. The government does this continuously. It's not as if we're going to start afresh to say, what can we do? We do this at all material times in terms of how do we move forward. Part of what we are saying, as we say we need to industrialize, is to create more opportunities so that there will be more possibilities and opportunities that are created for our citizens, so that we are able to employ our skills, also to deal with the new skills that come out of the tertiary institutions that don't have an experience. We have the plans how to handle that so that we can move forward quicker and make our skills, all of them, to engage on the challenges that we have. Thank you.
I thank the Honourable President. Mazibuko.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. President, the Honourable Deputy President said in this House last week that the major obstacle to the implementation of the youth wage subsidy, which you promised 2 years ago, was the resistance of the unions and COSATU in particular. Mr. President, it is a matter of fact that if the government had implemented the youth wage subsidy in April of 2010, nearly 250,000 young South Africans would by now have had the opportunity to move from poverty and into gainful employment. A policy deadlock between COSATU and the government has kept these young people out of work and was listed by ratings agency Moody's.
Just hold on. There is a point of order. Chief Whip.
Honorable Speaker, I think there's some problem with the listening skills because the Deputy President spoke in this House, and the words that are being put in his mouth were never uttered by him in this House.
Conclude, Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like enough time to finish my question, please. That wasn't
Conclude,
a point of
Honourable
order.
Member.
Mr. President, it is a matter of fact that if the government had implemented the youth wage subsidy policy in April of 2010, nearly 250,000 young South Africans would by now have had the opportunity to move from poverty and into employment. A policy deadlock between COSATU and the government has kept them out of work and was listed by ratings agency Moody's as a major reason for yesterday's downgrade in South Africa's debt outlook. Mr. President, this cannot go on. How do you plan to meet the new deadline of the 1st April 2012 for the implementation of the youth wage subsidy policy? Thank you.
The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And I'm sure we all agree that in a democratic country, consultation is one of the important things, and engagement. Only in countries where there's dictatorship, where if you're a government, you have an idea, you just decree, you put it. If we said we thought they needed to be that incentive that we talked about with regard to the youth, and COSATU as one of the very strong powerful trade union movement, we said we don't care what you say, we just proceeded. Certainly, you would have said this is autocracy. You don't listen to the voices, you just move. And we have been engaging COSATU on this matter. We've been engaging COSATU because it is important to do so. And that's part of the elements of democracy. In democracy, you do not move ahead because you are convinced. You have to take your citizens along, no matter how you feel. And this is what we've been doing. And we have made a lot of progress with COSATU on this matter.
Order, honourable members, order.
Of course, no progress because you don't know. Unless you want to be part of the discussions, then join the ANC and be part of the government. You will then be part of the negotiations. We have made very good progress on this matter, and we are very happy with the progress we have made. You will see the results very soon. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
I thank the Honourable President. I'm reminded that, in fact, the Deputy President said that this matter has been discussed in NEDLEC. Honourable President will now allow you to resume your seat. That, honourable members, that concludes questions to the President and the business for the day. The House is adjourned.